What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show. Me, Sean Sheehan, here on Sherdog.com. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Bryan Lacey before a very, very big month in the world of Oktagon MMA. We're going to look ahead to the next two cards in April. Oktagon 69, which is coming up this week, and in 2 weeks' time, Oktagon 70, which is a very, very interesting card as well, and a busy, busy month. It's been a busy start to the year, Brian, hasn't it? And a very good start to the year. Obviously, we spoke about Will Fleury and all that, but give us a quick synopsis there before we get going on the start to the year, because it's been a good year for Oktagon, hasn't it? And then only good things coming.
Yeah, it's been particularly special. I like the way we're cramming this in two events into one. That's a Bry One get one free. But do you like that? No,
I like it, Brian. I love it. It's good.
But it's been great, and honestly, just even coming into this event to see somebody like Max Holzer, who has kind of become a star in Oktagon over the last 4 fights, topping a cards, just a stone's throw away from his home city, sold out. I spoke to the ticket lady today, and there's like 20 tickets left. In particular, we can see the rise in Germany, but just to see that happen to the fighters and then also for Oktagon and the events, it's mad to watch, mate.
So, like, we've spoken a lot about the Czech scene, I suppose, and how big it's been there, but also, you know, they had the massive card in Germany last year, but this again is in Germany and has 2 Germans up the top, and like, Germany's a big market worldwide and a big country, you know, one of the leading countries worldwide. To have, you know, as you said here, basically a sellout card, and will be a sellout card probably by the time we finish recording here, maybe, with 2 German guys with 2 good records. It's a big fight for Germany. Tell us about this fight and I suppose the rivalry between these 2 guys and how it all started out.
Yeah, it's a massive fight. Dennis Ilbay versus Max Holzer, 2 fan favourites. 2 very different individuals. They both fought on that Frankfurt card, and again, that's testament to the sort of stars that they've created themselves, and also, you know, how the Oktagon fans have sort of taken these 2 in particular into their hearts. Dennis Ilbay, former boxer, claimed WBC titles. He's fought in like Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas. A really storied boxing career, but a very traditional guy, family guy. Like, his dad's his coach. His kids are his everything, but he's got this fun style. He's got this El Pistolero look. He's got his standard celebration at the end of each fight, and he's a banger. Like, every fight is exciting. You look at his run through the last fights, particularly that one against Diego Sheck in the Frankfurt arena. He's an exciting fighter, and he's a very authentic character as well. Then you flip to Holzer, and he's a kid. He's the craziest person to talk to because he's so, I won't say immature, it's not the right word, but you just feel like he's a young boy. He's like, but then, like, he has fun with everything. Every interview's fun. Every walkout, he comes out in a costume. His first one was Buzz Lightyear. Then he's Batman. Then he came out dressed as Dennis Ilbay because this beef had started. And they've got different personalities, different views in the world. But this is the great thing about this fight happening now. Everybody wants it to happen now. The beef happened after Frankfurt. There was some words spoken between Holzer, between Ilbay's dad. Ilbay wasn't happy about how Holzer was approaching, trying to get a fight with him. And in the end, it's happening now. And it's not just happening, it's headlining this card. So for me, outside the Jungwirth and the Eckelin fight, this is the biggest fight in Germany, and it's happening at the right time. So many times in MMA and boxing, you want fights to happen, but they kind of happen a year too late, or, you know, too early for one guy. And this is the perfect time for these 2 to go head to head. And the fact that they don't like each other, the fact that they've got their own fan base, and the fact that all eyes in Germany in particular will be on this fight makes it massive.
It's a very interesting one, because like you spoke about Holzer, and I watched a few of his fights, and I was like, geez, this guy is very, very good. And then I went and I looked at his age, and the fact that he only turned 23 this year in January is crazy for how good he is. You know, we were talking about Raul Rosas last week, and he's 20, and like, I'd argue that Max Holzer's probably a little bit ahead of him in his development as a fighter now, the next few years, obviously. But I think it's, do you know what this matchup is? This is the young guy who kind of knows he's better, I think, than the other guy. And he's like, well, you have all this fame. You've been around for a long time, and I want to take that from you because I'm the next guy. And this is perfect. This is kind of exactly what you want, I suppose, if you're him, but if you're the German scene, if you're Oktagon promoting a guy like this, because all right, he's taking on a challenger, as you said, has a lot of experience, a little bit less in MMA, but a lot of experience outside of MMA, and Holzer believes in him. Like you can watch Holzer and just know he believes in himself, because like he goes from being a good technical guy on the feet to being like just exceptional at changing levels. Like never stops on these takedowns. Like he gives a little bit of space on top, but just enough to like take your back and just destroy you a little bit more. And Ilbay is he's gonna have to. I've written down in my notes here. He's a very good movement, especially his head movement is fantastic. He's going to have to do a lot of movement in this fight to stay away from Holzer. But Ilbay's style, like I know, you know, he's a boxer undoubtedly. I would put him somewhere between like a Dominic Cruz and a Tim Elliott, the way he moves, and you know, but you know, that Fry fight, I watched that, he did get taken down and he got subbed in that fight, and I think, you know, Holzer fought Fry as well, if I'm not mistaken, and he beat him as well. But then you see a fight like the Lingal fight where he, you know, gets taken down or kind of goes for a takedown himself and lands on bottom, but then has this epic comeback, and he's vicious knees and the clinch and everything. If you're Holzer, you're going to have to be very careful in this fight, aren't you? Like, get him down, okay, get on top and sub him, all well and good, but if you don't and it turns into a clinch or it gets out into the open, Ilbay is very, very dangerous. So this is by no means go across the cage, take him down and sub him. I'm sure Holzer will be hoping that, but Ilbay is dangerous enough to make this one exciting.
I totally agree with that. I think Ilbay reminds me as well with his style, not as powerful a hitter, but definitely a hard hitter like John Lineker, the way he covers the distance. And I remember talking to Corey Fry after that, and he won the fight, but he's known as a striker. And he just said that the way he closes range, he's much quicker than you expect. He's much more technical. He looks like he's just swinging hooks as he steps in. But for me, it's also for Holzer is much more of a grappler. Like, he's very well rounded, but grappling is the base he started in. But he's getting very confident with his hands. Now, for me, it's whether he becomes overconfident with that. I think there is a very clear route to victory for Holzer, but I think Holzer might want to beat Ilbay at his own game, which is a dangerous game to play. So, you know, styles-wise, age-wise, personality-wise, you couldn't be further apart from each other, and it makes for a very exciting fight.
Tell us about Kali Taha. He's another German, obviously fought in the UFC, and things didn't go massively well there, but outside of the UFC, he has an unbelievable record, and he's obviously coming back and going to be fighting in Germany against Jose Zarauz from Peru. I've absolutely nailed that name there. I said, you know, who's won. What has he won in 4 of his last 5? The only guy he's lost in the last couple of years is David Martinez in Combacha, and we know what happens when guys are brought into Combacha and fight David Martinez. You know, he's been there with the likes of Franz Malambo and others as well. That's an interesting fight, but I suppose this is the coming out party for Kalita coming back to Germany.
Well, his last fight was almost a year to the day in this very arena. So Taha is a star in that region in particular. But a big star in Germany. I mean, his jump to the UFC, there was obviously some issues as well. And for me, you know, some fighters fight better on the national scene, and they shine more, and they've got the fan base there and those home comforts. And Taha has talked very much about struggling with traveling, with weight cuts, with being out of his home comforts, with even not being able to get his brother sometimes to the fights to be in his corner. So this, for me, I think he's witnessed the rise of Oktagon in Germany, and now he's looking for a home, and it's happening with a lot of these fighters now. And this is the credit to the German scene and also the fan base out there. He's coming back, and the fact he's coming back in this arena is massive. Now, Jose, again, you can't be. There's no given in mixed martial arts, but this is going to be a tough ask for him. I think Taha is hungry, from what I've heard from his camp, from the people around him. Like, laser focused. His last fight was a year ago, and they said he was that's the first one back from the big show. And there's a lot of weird emotions stepping back into that, you know, the dream of where it was or what you could be has kind of disappeared. But now it's reignited under Taha. And I think this could be explosive. And he wants to put on a performance. He's already called out Holzer. He's already asked for that fight. And if you look on that domestic scene, and particularly that region, those are perhaps the 2 biggest names there. So if he gets a big victory, I expect him to call for the main event winner. If that's Holzer, then that could tee us up for a great return to Dortmund.
I always like when there's like an undercard fight that can tee up a winner for the main event, and we go straight from there in the press conference afterwards or whatever. It just makes so much sense. I think the fight that stands out to me the most in this card is Predrag Bogdanovic against Fedor Durek, because like we've spoken about Bogdanovic a good few times in our previews here. Like he's only lost 2 fights out of his 18, and they're to Will Brooks and Los Incada. He's beaten Hafini Nafukwa, who I think is just a phenomenal fighter, and a whole lot of, I think, 7 finishes in there as well in his career, and he's coming in against this guy in Fedor Jurek out of Germany as well, who is undefeated 7-0, and like this guy is my type of style of fighter that I like, to be honest. Light on the feet, switch stance, blast in with these big punches, but he's going in here against a guy who's a very good grappler and who is unbelievably durable and unbelievable cardio, so a nightmare matchup for someone like Jurek. But there's a reason this fight has been made, I would say, and people maybe believe in Jurek and believe in his ability. To me, he looks a real top prospect. Maybe it's a little bit early to be putting him in there, but what you think of this matchup? And it's a very, very interesting one, isn't it? Because like this could go one or two ways. I think maybe the younger guy who is a little bit wet behind the ears. He's only 20 years of age, isn't he? Jesus, it's almighty! Like against the guy who's been to the very, very top. And done it all, especially in Oktagon as well. It's a risk, but I think an interesting risk. I love this matchup.
Yeah, and you might like this as well, because you talk about liking his fight style and what he brings in the cage. He turned down George Staines, and he said because it's not a big enough name. And he came to Oktagon and asked for Predrag. He's the one. And his coaches were like, there's a big experience difference. But they have massive faith in him. He trains with Stefan Putz, Max Koga, Christian Eckelin, MMA Spirit in Frankfurt. They believe he is the next one. You've seen the stars that have risen, and he has picked this opponent. He wants this guy. But Predrag Bogdanovic is, for me, he's extremely good. You saw he manhandled Nafuka and in his own world, just dominated him in the scrambles. Created a bloody mess by the end of the fight, with no doubt that he would get his hand raised by the end of it. Very intelligent guy, a law student outside of fighting. And Fedor, the flip side of him is all he has known is fighting. It was his dad who gave him the name Fedor. His dad's favorite fighter was Fedor. His dad passed away, and then when he was 4 or 5 years old, his mom said, I'm going to follow what your dad wanted, which is for you to get into martial arts. So they put him into martial arts. He then just excelled in every aspect. He then moved to Frankfurt from Serbia on his own, took up lodgings with MMA Spirit, and since then he has just, like, his star has risen. And that last performance, that first fight for Oktagon, showed how good he was. But for him to call for this fight, and he said respectfully to George Stein, he said, I know he's good, but he's not. His record won't get me anywhere. I want to get somewhere quick, and so give me that guy. And he asked for it. Bogdanovic said yes instantly, and that's the way the fight was made. But he has put in front of himself a mountain to climb, but he truly believes he can do it.
If he does it, he'll be very close to the very, very top. And I think, if he can beat Bogdanovic, he can beat anyone. Imagine him versus Keita or someone like that early doors. To be very, very interesting. Aaron Abbey is always a story when he's on these cards. He's fighting Mohamed Valid, who is one of these guys. He's kind of an odd fighter for modern day. He's kind of slow paced, and he loads up and he shots, and sometimes he loads up and he shots and he lands, and sometimes he doesn't, and it can be tough work for him apart from that. Whereas Abbey, we know he's all wrestler, this kind of hopping in striker, as I always call him, with stiff shots and not the biggest for the weight class. We know he's, the weight cutting and stuff has been an issue for him, although that's getting a little bit better these days now, isn't it? But, just a hard guy to fight against. And this should be a good fight for AB here. What do you think of this one? Like, AB, again, another guy who's never too far away from a title, never mind what the results have been recently. And as I said, Brian, always a good story coming into any card he's fighting on.
Yeah, well, we know the story of Aaron Abbey. We know the heart was on display against Zhumagulov as well. Many fighters would have, not been able to withstand that amount of damage, not be able to keep coming to still make it a fight after 3 bloody rounds against that Kazakhstan monster. And going in against Valid, this was my concern just with Valid is He's only fought at 125 once in his career. That was against Beno Ademir. Every other fight has either been, I think the lowest or closest to it was 130. And then every other fight has either been bantamweight or featherweight. I think his last fight was, I'm not sure, but I think it was 140 catchweight. So for me, I think Waleed is putting a hell of a lot of pressure on himself. I think for him to make that weight at 125 and that far out, I think it's a number of years since he fought Beno Ademir and lost that fight by split decision, by the way. So that's interesting, as Beno's just got the title. So for me, I'm going to be very, very curious about the weight cut for Waleed. He's one of Max Holzer's training partners, former Max Holzer opponent, but now they train together at Fight School Hanover, which again is not far from Dortmund. So yeah, his style and also his run of form. He was 6-0, I think, when he first started, and now he's something like 2-4 in his last 6 or something around that. He's not been in the best form. He's been against some decent opponents for sure, but it's interesting. The weight cut for me is the biggest worry for Waleed, because we know how detrimental that can be. We don't like to see fighters putting themselves in that sort of situation, and then to cut that weight and have to go and fight Aaron Abbey the day after is going to be a hell of a challenge. Also, one interesting thing on his record, I think all 6 of his wins are finishes, which and Aaron Abbey has only been finished, I think, once or twice in his entire career. He's never been submitted. I think he's only lost by KO or TKO a couple of times. One was because of, if you remember, him slipping around on the canvas.
Yeah.
So, I think it's a fun fight. Every Aaron Abbey fight, my heart is in my mouth. It's one of those guys that, he never makes it easy work. But I think this one is a good opponent for him, particularly because of the weight cut. But I think a lot of drama could happen on those scales on Friday.
Mm-hmm. Very, very interesting to always have something like that coming up the day before the fight to see how it goes. Just before we move on from this card, Lucy Pudilova, you think by looking at Brittany Cloudy, 6-5, oh, maybe this is a bit of a bounce back fight for her. But looking at Cloudy, won her last 2, and all her fights have been, that she's lost. Serena De Jesus, Erin Blanchfield, and others lost fights in Invicta. This is a tougher matchup for her. I know she's a big, tall girl as well, and is well able to get finishes in there. I think it's an interesting fight, but you'd hope Pudilova would get through that. I want to ask you, though, about this one. Tell us about this Uwe Schroeder and Eddie's Taskai. I heard this is a 1-0 guy against an 0-0 guy. This is a bit of an influencer one, is it? This is got to be a crazy one.
This is definitely a lean into that those realms for sure. Yes. And these two guys, they don't like each other. One's a fitness influencer who has done some. I think he's competed twice in MMA, but he's got a massive following in the millions. And then this Adiz guy, he is big personality. He's called this guy. He's asked for it. He actually approached Oktagon to do this. So this is definitely a lean into that influencer style of stuff. But when you look at, for me, it's you got to respect the sport if you're doing this. It's the same when we did it with Jake Paul, Paul Smith and Jake when they fought. They took the sport so serious. If you watched any of that series, there was no, trash talk, no drama, no beating each other up at the weigh-ins or throwing coffee or water bottles at each other. They were two guys who really wanted to respect the sport and try as hard as they can to be the best that they can in that short amount of time to put on a performance that is worthy of being in there. These two guys, what has impressed me, because I was a bit fearsome of it to start with, but they are so in. They're training with good people. Adiz has based himself out in Thailand for the last 2.5 months. They're putting financially a lot into getting ready for this. Physically, they look phenomenal. But it's always that thing, that lack of experience when those big bright lights shine. It's more who can handle that than I think what skills you bring to the cage on that night. So we'll see. The fact that there is bad blood in this one, I think will make it a bit more interesting. But the German market seem to enjoy it. There's been lots of good reaction online to it. So we'll see, mate. We'll see what happens.
Let's move on to Oktagon 70 and Igor Severino de Silva against Jack Cartwright. I love this fight, and the reason I love this fight is because MMA kind of gives lads second opportunities. And I think that's what this fight is. On maybe one side more than the other. But look, people don't remember Igor Severino. He's the lad who bit his opponent in the UFC. And if people look back at my tweets and my podcast from that night, I thought it was a bit harsh. Look, he made a mistake. Was it the worst thing in the world? Now, for him to get caught, and it felt like, it felt to me that night like his career was over. And I'm delighted Oktagon gave him an opportunity. And he won his fight against Jonas Magard, who is, one of the best fighters in the region. A split decision, close fight over 3 rounds. And Jack Cartwright, the other side of it, like, such a good fighter in Cage Warriors. I think a lot of people, who cover that scene were talking about him being like, this guy's going to get to the UFC, and he's not going to only get to the UFC, he's going to do very well. And then there was that fight where there's disqualification against him, and then he went to the Contender Series and he didn't show his full worth, I don't think. And it felt again like it was all going sideways. But then Oktagon, come in and he's had a new, lease on life there. And he hasn't won every fight, don't get me wrong, but he has looked good, and now he's fighting for the vacant title here. Very interesting kind of clash of styles as well, with Cartwright, who can fight standing or on the ground, and the Hannibal, as he calls himself now, who can do the same, 4 knockouts and 4 submissions as well. I'll be honest, I don't know which way this fight is going to go, because if you're Cartwright, do you really want to take Severino down, and get into his game where he's obviously very good with submissions and different sorts of submissions. As I was looking through his record, he's north-south chokes and guillotines and arm bars and rear naked chokes and everything. Do you keep it standing where he's dangerous as well? Or, is Severino the one that's going to be, trying to grapple? I think he might against Cartwright, because Cartwright can be so dangerous and powerful as well. I love this fight. This is about as high level as you get, isn't it? With lads here who have, hit a wall, I suppose, in their career and bounced back. And sometimes that makes a fighter, Brian, doesn't it?
No, I love it, and I can feel that you like this fight as well. That's the great thing. And when they announced it again, Magard had beaten Cartwright, then Cartwright came back and beat Mate Sanakidze, which I thought was a great fight and a brilliant performance by him, and again showed a lot of his game in that. Then this new character, like quite literally new character, came into the bantamweight division in Igor Severino, and he beat Magard. And then that kind of, because Magard was the number 1 contender, it looked like we'd be looking for another person to come in and fight Jonas. But I think you're exactly right. This is a big opportunity for both guys. Severino has been through hell and back after that biting incident. He got death threats. His family got death threats. He thought about doing the unthinkable in that period. Luckily, his brother's around him. His family stuck by him. His gym stuck by him. They very openly, pushed him forwards to keep believing, to keep fighting. He put a great performance in against Magard. And I love the matchup against Cartwright because Cartwright is so versatile. I think his hands are underrated. The power he has. I remember meeting Saul Rogers and Carl Prince before an event, Tanko, years ago in Manchester. And I think it was Cartwright's maybe 2nd or 3rd amateur fight. And they said to me, watch this kid. Watch him. And he came in, looked like nothing, little tail hanging out the back of his head, and he sparked a man into another dimension. I was like, oh my God. And then you watch his career through Cage Warriors, everything he's done. He's a real talent, and he's a dangerous talent. And what's great about both these bantamweights is their finishes. So I think, 5 rounds, I think it's going to be fun. I think they are going to engage very early. They'll want to test themselves. Severino loves Oktagon. He got a great welcome. He loved the crowd, the big show, everything that came with it. And Cartwright just has this inner belief that he is the best. You speak to him and there's no pomp around it. There's no, flashiness or trying to, he just truly believes that his skill set is better than any other man out there. So, and if he gets the belt, whichever one gets the belt, I'm sure Jonas will be looking up and saying, give me someone so I can get back in the cage with them. So again, you look at stories, and I think this one's wrapped in them as well.
100%. We have the strawweight title fight as well on here, as well as a lot of the Tip Sport Game Changer fights. We talk about that in a second. Mallory Martin against Eva Duarte. Again, 2 people who, had big opportunities, I suppose, in different places. One, obviously, Mallory Martin over in the UFC. And, when I always feel bad for people when they have two decision losses and they get cut. But again, she has really hit the ground running since she came back. 3 in a row in Oktagon, beating Katarina Delidza, who, had beaten her, obviously, in her first fight in Oktagon. And that's a big win over 5 rounds. And then you look at Eva, the other side of it. She's won, 4 of her last 5. A lot of decisions in there as well. I would be surprised if this wasn't a 5-round fight between 2 well-rounded ladies here. It's a big fight for the division as well. And I think Mallory Martin is what it does, when she always has a word when she wins. And I think, carrying the title in here, as we talked about it the last time, I think that maybe the division is still building, and you never know who's going to come over, let's say across from the UFC or somewhere like that. It's a big fight for this division, and an interesting one as well, because this could be, I don't know, I have a feeling this could be a close one if it goes to the judges, Brian. What do you think of it?
Yeah, I think Eva Dorthe does feel like she's got this second chance in Oktagon, stepping away, getting a victory outside of the promotion, and then getting a shot at the champ, which is absolutely huge. Mallory Martin showed, and again, when you looked at the rematch between her and Delista, it was so one-sided, the first fight with Delista dominating it in every area. It dropped her a couple of times. Every time Mallory tried to switch it up, she would got a shot stuffed, just beaten up on the feet. So for me, when they did the rematch, especially in the stadium, I was like, this is a tough night for Mallory Martin. But she went back, and rather than getting broken, she got motivated. She changed a few things in her camp. She now trains a lot with Rose Namajunas, one of her main sparring partners. And it was as one-sided the other way for the title in front of 60,000 fans as it was in that first fight. So I think it's a great fight. I think, both these ladies, usually take it to a decision, but whoever can dominate first. But what I love about this is below them is Katarina Delista and Aileen Olberg. And that kind of sets up, because it's not a thick division. It's not, we haven't got 20 strawweights waiting in the wings. This does set up the story. And for me, if Katarina Delista can get through Olberg, she's jumping herself back up. We've already announced Frankfurt in September, I believe. And then if Olberg can beat Delista, we've got new blood, we've got a new opportunity, we've got a new challenge for whoever the champion may be. So I love it.
This card is in the Czech Republic, and I think one of the biggest stories in Czech MMA over the last few weeks and months has been Dominik Humberger. I love this. This is I've explained it on the show before, but maybe you can give us a breakdown of it as well. So Humberger was in KSW one night, and then the next night he showed up in Oktagon, like Monday Night Wars, WCW, that type of stuff here. KSW not happy with him at all, but he's gone to the Czech-based promotion now, and he's the Czech soldier and a massive fan favorite there. He's taken on Samuel Kristovic. Is not an easy matchup to start at all. He's some very good wins. He's beaten Carlos Vermola, Robert Pukac, and others down through the years as well. It's an interesting fight, but that story of Dominik Humberger is brilliant. And I have great respect for KSW as well, everything like that. But Oktagon have definitely come out on the winning side of that, haven't they? You must be delighted to have pulled that stroke.
You probably won't believe me, but because again, it was I think it was advertised as the wild card who would go against Kristovic.
Yeah.
And the only people that knew about who it would be were Andrei Novotny, Pavel Neruda, and the matchmaker. So this was all in talks behind the scenes. Then I think they brought the production guy in just before it happened. And we had the commentary meeting, and everybody was kind of going, is it going to be that? How are you going to do this type of thing? But for them to unveil it as it was, to give us this fight in particular, but to do it the night after KSW, I very much saw Andre and Pavel with a big smile on their face when it all came through. And, it was an interesting moment between the promotions. That can't be underestimated. I think that was I can't say it wasn't intentional. I think they definitely knew what they were doing. And now it's given us this fight. This is a fight that Humberger says is a dream come true. That's one of the reasons he came across to fight Kristovic. That gives us the Czech Republic versus Slovakia. Kristovic, former interim middleweight champion, somebody who's fought for the welterweight belt before. He's beaten. His last fight was knocking out Carlos Vermola in round one in the most emphatic fashion. And Humberger trains with Vermola as well. So training at that monster gym, they have rounds. So there's a lot of undercurrents around this that make it fantastic. But just that little cherry on top of the drama, like you said, the WWE or WC, whatever it was, they used to do all that sort of stuff. It definitely added to it, and it's definitely put eyes on this for sure.
Some other great fights in it as well. I was surprised to see Ion Sardou gone up. He's still the welterweight champion, isn't he? He's gone up to middleweight to go into the tournament, and he's taken on Christoph Jacko, who has fought up at light heavyweight, hasn't he? I know Sardou has kind of gone up and down as well, but a very interesting matchup. And one of those ones, we've spoken, about Will Fleury and other people that they try to move weights and get into the different tournament, obviously, because there's a great financial reward. But Sardou at this stage of his career, won 4 of his last 5, beating the likes of Brito, Cosma, Lahore, Marek Hertes. This was really a fight that he didn't maybe need to take, a risk that he didn't need to take, but he's taken it anyway, and I think MMA fans really like that. Jacko as well, you could say, maybe Jacko is getting on a little bit in his career, but he's still only 35. He won his last fight after, with that mad night in PFL where, the ring announcers are failing drug tests. This is an interesting fight. There's no doubt about it. A big risk for Sardou, Brian.
Yeah, I'm glad they don't test the commentators, mate. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. So, yes, massive. And, just claimed that welterweight belt, a belt that he promised himself he would win. He's a fan favourite. He's a fighter's favourite as well. Everybody loves Ion Sardou. He trains alongside Paradisa, all the guys over there in Ankos MMA as well. Muradov, all these guys. Was training in UFD gym with Paulo Costa in preparation for this. I think Oban Elliott was over there as well, helping Soldic get ready for his fight. He's a big guy. He's bigger than he seems. Outside the camp, he was, even before the welterweight title fight, he was 96, 98 kilos. So he thinks it's a good move for him, and he thinks he's more in his prime than Yotko. But for me, Yotko is he's so consistent with his form, and he's got such a, he's even though he's got a lot of fights, he's not in a style of fight where, you're watching him take a lot of damage all the time. Look at that Will Fleury fight. It's a lot of against the cage stuff. It's a lot of control-based stuff. He's had, I think, 15 or 17 fights in the UFC. He got into the top 15. He's got experience. He still trains over at American Top Team. I mean, Oktagon fans will not know him as well as maybe Ion Sardou, but I think this is the toughest fight you could have put in front of Sardou. And I think part of this is, if Sardou is wanting to come in this, the matchmakers were saying, well, you will get a tough test, because if you keep moving through, then that welterweight belt as well as the middleweight belt could be frozen, and it's never good for divisions to get hold of, one, yet alone two. But if he passes this test, and if he does it in the sort of style that he won the fight against Kike Brito, then I think many people, even though we're questioning the move now, might be going, okay, this could be genius.
Before we go talk through the other middleweight fights on it, I was told to ask you about Marek Mazuch against Piotr Wawrniak, and I was said that it was put to me that this one is going to be a banger of all bangers. So tell us about that one and the other ones before we go here.
It's just fun. 2 ex-military guys, one from the Polish army, one from the Slovak army, special forces, and just hard hitters, exciting fighters. Wawrniak, former interim champion as well, gave Patrick Kinsell 2 rounds of hell. The most trouble we'd seen prior to the Engizek. Even in the Engizek, I think he put him in more danger than Engizek did in that fight. But Kinsell somehow found a way to get the win and to retain, unify the belt again. Mazuch is just a nightmare. Like, you look at how he fights and the confidence he's got now, who he trains with. He trains with Vlasto Chepo, he trains with Budai, he trains with Radovanushka, and he is just a knockout monster. You look at his last fight against David Zavada, big step up for him as far as name in Germany, and he walks through him. He absolutely walked through him. He just hits different. He's the first guy ever in any combat sport to knock out Apollo Silva. They did it in a boxing match in big gloves. Apollo was showboating. He smashed Mazuch in the first round, and then Mazuch just changed one little thing, moving his head a little bit, and then knocked out Apollo. So Mazuch, for me, is the harder hitter. Wawrzyniak is the gritty, Polish power type guy. They look the part. They absolutely bring it every single time to the cage. So I think it is, one a lot of people have their eye on for sure.
And the other one, Seppo and Cartal, that's the last one. There's the Civic versus Cavaland as well. That's the alternate bout, is it? Or am I going
That's just like the reserve match.
Yeah.
Civic again, he's coming up a way. He's tiny for welterweight, but he's somehow coming up to middleweight against Hoja Hadjivand. That's the reserve fight. And then Chepo, 12 wins, 12 finishes.
Always fun, isn't he?
It's always fun. Well, even when he gets in danger, he's like that guy. As soon as you see him hurt, actually, you get worried for the other guy because
it's just starting now.
Exactly. You woke him up. And then Erhan Cartel, he's underrated for me in this. I think people are thinking he's just been given to Chepo. His only losses are by knee injury to Youngworth and David Zavada. That's his only 2 losses. Outside of that, I think he's more well-rounded than Chepo. 12 wins, a lot of 9 or 10 finishes in there as well. A lot for him to gain in this fight. But, Chepo is one of the scariest humans I have ever met, ever.
Bryan, thank you very much.
Apart from you, Sean. Apart from you, obviously. Sorry.
I'm not that scary.
Apologize.
I'm not that scary. I'm a friendly bear, as they call me. Bryan, thank you very much for joining me today. And tune into Oktagon 69, April 5th, April 26th, in Oktagon 70. And there's going to be a lot more this year. I know we were still waiting with bated breath to see what's next for Will Flory. There was a big, hefty blondie lad calling him out there a couple of days ago. So we'll... we'll see what happens with that, but it's always a fun year. And as I said, with these 2 cards as well, there's fights that's going to be set up for later on in the year. So tuning into these will be the appetizer for the main course as well coming up later in the year. So we'll leave it at that. Bryan, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. My name is Sean Sheehan for Sherdog.com, and we'll see you all next time.